Hello and welcome to The Magic in You, where I'm here with Don McLeod, a local Adelaide author and tarot extraordinaire, whose interest in divination began in 1985. And he has actually been studying New Age subjects and esoteric subjects long before that time. But ever since, Don has been researching and studying in particular the tarot, as well as running workshops on it. Don sees the tarot imagery everywhere in daily life, in statues, fiction, poems, and many of these spark memories of the tarot characters and their settings. Tarot is a passion that guides his life in practical and also spiritual levels, and as such, it is a delight to welcome Don here. So thank you, Don. Welcome to The Magic in You.
Thank you very much. Nice to chat.
And likewise. So I know the tarot has been your passion really, and you don't really follow, say, a magical or spiritual path as such, even though you have been involved in pagan mystical groups over the years. But I just thought we'll just focus these discussions on tarot being a focal point for you. And let's start off with, how did you first get interested in the tarot and what was its attraction?
Because I was interested in the New Age subjects and had been involved in the Rosicrucian order for many years, I was interested in all areas of mysticism, esotericism, and ended up working in a New Age bookshop. And from that area, I just worked my way through the shelves and became familiar with a whole lot of different subject areas. And eventually worked my way through to the tarot section. It was something that I'd put off for a little while because I had a background as a youngster in the Methodist Church, and they're not too thrilled about things like tarot. So I ignored it for a little while and then thought, well, I'll poke my nose in and see what I can find. I ended up getting this book here, which is the book that Arthur Edward Waite wrote to explain his new tarot deck that he produced with Pamela Coleman Smith. And unfortunately, the cards that I was sold didn't relate to this book, and it was very hard going to try and match up the meanings of the cards as described by Waite and this other deck of cards that I had. It took a while, but I pretty much put on the shelf for a little while and then went and bought myself a proper, what I call a proper pack of cards, the standard Rider Waite. It's the one that I really found worked well with Waite's descriptions and, of course, the other books that I eventually picked up for beginners and worked out for myself how to use the cards. There weren't many people around in those days to guide you on this, so it was a trial and error type of thing. And yeah, I've stuck with that pack of cards ever since. And I've sort of fiddled with some other cards occasionally, but I just like all the little symbols and designs that Waite and Smith put into their deck. And I use them on a fairly regular basis for myself and for others. And because I've become so familiar with it now, and because when I run workshops, I get people to have that deck of cards, because what I'm explaining about the origins of the cards, what I'm explaining about the elements associated with the suits, it all makes sense if you have that particular deck of cards. Whereas so many other types of cards are a bit adjacent to the standard and therefore not necessarily relevant to some of the original writings. And of course, once you are familiar with that particular tarot deck, and once you are familiar with the concept of divination after a year or three, then you can explore other types of tarot decks and transfer that knowledge. But if you try to come at it from an obscure tarot deck or oracle deck and then expect to become a good tarot reader, it's a bit hard if you don't have the grounding in the basics.
No, thanks for sharing that, because my next question was going to be, there's so many decks available today, and we're just sort of focusing on tarot decks. I know I've got a few different tarot decks here, but my preference has always been Rider-Waite, or the one that sort of like stemmed from the Rider-Waite.
Mhm.
Where, as you were talking about the symbolisms, because my understanding, and please correct me or elaborate if you wish, is that the Rider-Waite, there's so many different layers to the imagery that often aren't transferred into some of the, say, I don't know, there's dragon tarots and cat tarots and I don't know, unicorn tarots, and some of them don't actually have the in-depth imagery with the Rider-Waite deck. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. I think with some of those other types of, what would you call them? Just other types of decks that are more thematic, I suppose. They're fine and they're good, but I think that you'd have to use your intuition a lot with those ones, which is also fine. But I regard using tarot as being a good blend of some traditional know-how, some key words and things like that, and key concepts, combined with your intuition. And that way you can marry the two of them and you can always find where you're at, or if you draw a blank on something intuitive wise, well, then you can go back to your basics and dig in a bit deeper with some of the symbols that are on the cards. So, as I said before, learning from that Rider-Waite deck, the standard one, you get the basics under control and you get
Mm.
to understand more quickly, I believe, the concept of divination, which you can then transfer to other areas.
Yes, and also with well, I won't say it. Yes, I would say a lot of books or a lot of references which are available on the tarot tend to use the Rider-Waite deck, including that. Now, this is one of the first editions of your book, Real Tarot. You've got an updated. So mine's 2012, I think, a few years ago. You've got the updated version there, the purple cover, and you use the Rider-Waite
Oh, yes.
cards all through that. And
Illustrated with the illustrated with the white cards so that when you're reading the description, you can pick out those symbols that I'm talking about.
yes. So what inspired you to actually put all your knowledge together into a book?
Well, this was back in the early 90s when I was running a bookshop at the time. It was a general bookshop, which was great running a bookshop because then you can go through all the catalogs and gradually build up this metaphysical section to quite a degree and order in the books you want to check out before having to buy them, have a read of them. And people would come through, and if they started asking about tarot, um, and they'd ask me who they could go to see to learn about tarot or which book was the best one, I'd have to say, well, this book's okay in that first section there, and that other book over there was a bit better in that area. But eventually, especially when they started saying, who can I learn from? I started taking on people and thought, well, I'd better put together some notes and put together some workshop notes for future things. And as it turned out, a guy that I knew who was a bookseller, he came through and knew that I was interested in all the metaphysical stuff. And he said, oh, this company that I'm working for, which was called Gemcraft at the time, they're wanting to write a series of books on new agey subjects. And do you know anyone who could put together a small book on tarot? And I said, yeah, I sort of do know somebody has some notes already about this. So I pretty much just transferred all those notes into this book, which was called Practical Guide to the Tarot. And that did all right. People used to sell those in conjunction with the Rider-Waite deck because in those days it was only about $10 or something for the book. So it sold all right. And once the contract for that ran out, I decided that rather than just republish that book, I would revise it, update it, throw together a whole lot of other information that I'd come to know since then, and put together that book so that I could have it available for people who wanted a bit more of oh, dare I say it, a bit more practical or down to earth approach to tarot rather than saying, oh, yes, this card's good because the angels told me that this relates to this sort of subject. Or when you're reading your tarot cards, make sure that you listen to the whispers of the angels in the background and as to what the meanings are. So I was trying to get away from all of that and put together a book that was more grounded, more realistic, in my view, and could take people very gently and steadily on a progressive path that was going to mean that they recognized, I guess, the magic in themselves about doing readings rather than uh, thinking that the cards themselves have magical properties associated with them.
No, thank you for that. And what I also like about your book is that it's written in a very easily to understand and digest manner as well. It's almost like it said if they're taken from your workshop notes that you're actually in the room, telling me, about the cards and the descriptions and also the symbolism in the cards, as it was mentioned earlier, that sometimes in the more abstract decks aren't often missed or excluded as well. So congratulations. And this is, I said, this is the old edition. You've got the purple edition, and it's fantastic that you sort of put a book out that's really easily to read and digestible for anybody who can pick up from beginner all the way through to probably the more advanced practitioner as well.
Thank you. And without meaning to jump in on you there, but also it might come across that I'm being just a bit of a doddery old bugger who just likes things a certain way, and that's quite true. But I'm not just talking about tarot in all those pragmatic ways, using the cards in a system as such, because what I'm also working on is at the moment a book on the spiritual lessons of the tarot. And so tarot, what I like people to understand is there are areas about the tarot that relate to your everyday life, relationships, your money situation, your working situation, your health and energy levels. And that's great to know that there are cards in there that are going to tell you what's coming up as events in your life. There's also a big section of the tarot called the Major Arcana, which relates to the spiritual side of life as well. And maybe it's because I like to focus on the spiritual side, but I find in quite a lot of my readings for people, or maybe it's just that I attract people who are interested in these sort of areas as well, the more spiritual development side of it. But so many cards will come up indicating that they're ready to change their life and that they progress spiritually enough to handle what's coming next. So that's a very important part of the tarot. And once again, without meaning to rave on too much, I find that few too many people, especially books on tarot that's talking to beginners, they relate the cards as, well, this card means this when it comes up, and this card means that when it comes up. But they don't consider that what you're reading about is all the areas of a person's life in one go. You have to take into account the spiritual or psychological side of things, as well as the more mundane side of things as you're reading. See the parts of the tarot as separate groups, but bring them all together as a whole when you're doing the reading.
No, great advice, and thank you for sharing that sort of insight into reading cards. And another question on the subject of reading: what happens when, say, I mean, the cards basically just a guide. It's up for the individual to ultimately make the decision. But if there's like you see in the cards the message or the inspiration or the encouragement for them to undergo either really big sort of personal changes, or if I wouldn't say, well, maybe if there's insight into big health issues or things like that come up, this is a sort of a very delicate area to sort of share that knowledge with the parents, some readers sort of gloss over it, some of them avoid them. Where do you stand on, say, when the news isn't all that peachy, shall we say? How do you go around sort of sharing that sort of insight to your clients?
I don't think a tarot reader is doing their job if they gloss over things, if they don't mention important things. If you're seeing something in your card layout that is relevant to the person you're doing the reading for, if you're seeing something that is going to help them or help them understand their situation, well, then you must bring it up. You must say what comes to mind. And some of it's going to be indelicate. Some of it's going to, you might even be embarrassed to try and express whatever it is that you're seeing. But you'll often find that the person is already aware of this. They're already aware of it on some level. And when you point it out to them, they go, oh, yeah, you're right, you're right. One interesting thing that happened many years ago was I did a reading for this lady, and what had happened was that this lady's husband had died only a month or two ago, and so she was wanting some guidance as to where she was going to next. And the weird thing was, as I was looking at these cards and doing the readings for her, I was thinking to myself, she's not really grieving about this. This is not really hitting home with her. I wonder what's going on. So I took the step of saying, hey, look, what I'm not seeing here is you being really upset about this. I'm quite surprised. Am I off base or what's going on here? And she said, oh no, he was a bastard. It was a really difficult life living with him. He drank too much, he gambled our money away, and this, that, or the other. And to be frank, I'm glad he's gone. I can get on with my life now. And so from that point, I was able to then steer her into the directions of how she could improve her life from this point, going from that difficult situation, then as a single person, as an individual, as to where they can go. And so if you don't take that leap of faith and say what you're seeing, well, then you bog things down and you start doubting yourself and go around in circles, and that's not helping anyone. You have to say what you see and deal with the consequences. They could always say, no, you're off base. But
No,
even then, I've had occasions when if I've been doing a market sort of readings and things, and there might be a few friends saying, oh, let's, you're gonna have a reading, so and they'll want to stand around and watch. And so at one point I was saying to this lady, oh, this you're like this in your interactions with people. She goes, no, I'm not. Okay, well, so I aimed it a bit of a different way, trying to say it in another way she might understand. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Okay, well, let's leave it at that, and we'll go on to something else then. And as they walked away, one of the friends turned and ran back to me and said, she is like that. She just doesn't know it. And so sometimes people aren't willing to see things, but more often than not, they are grateful that you brought something up that's been brewing within them, or that they had some idea of what was going on, but needed it pointed out to them to clarify it and to start to deal with it.
yes, and as you said, often it's the people we need like a complete stranger to tell us what we already know. We're
Yes.
not going to believe ourselves until someone else is going to tell us. So that's just like,
Yes.
okay, so it has more sort of weight on it, I
Yeah.
guess. If it's
Yeah,
it's in
that's
the
true.
cards, it's not just me, it's in the
Yeah,
cards.
that's right. Or it might be they say, oh, my friends keep telling me that, but I didn't believe them. But once again, as you said, you've got an outsider telling us exactly the same thing. They've got to start taking notice of things.
Yeah, yes. Now, so coming back to like, there's so many decks out there, there's so many interpretations out there. There are also various misinformation circulating about the tarot, and I'm just wondering, I think this is a little bit of a bugbear for you. There's a few things
Yeah.
there that sort of get under your skin a little bit. So I'm going to hand the floor over to you, and maybe you can sort of like squash some of this misinformation and educate us a little bit more about the tarot.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, you're right. That is something that I like to push down upon, especially with people who come into a workshop and they haven't used tarot cards before and they want to find out about them, but they're still a bit scared of the tarot. And it's often because of these superstitions or misinformation that's around. They don't know how to deal with some of the things that they're told they should do and must do and have to believe in with the tarot. Just little things like you must wrap your cards in black silk and pop them in a wooden box so that they don't get affected by negative energies and end up giving you bad readings all the time. That's something that has just come through over time and isn't a necessity. You can just leave the cards out on the bench top or desk or whatever. I find it a bit strange that if people are going off to play poker with their mates, that they haven't put that deck of cards into a wooden box to protect it from getting a bad hand. It's the same sort of thing, really. So people, I think, people tend to view these cards as being a magical system or energy in themselves, whereas they're a tool that the individual, uses in order to gain some more insight for themselves. They're not going to be affected by not being wrapped up in silk or put away in a wooden box. People also sometimes get told by well-meaning tarot teachers and people on the web that tarot cards come from Egypt or Atlantis, and so therefore they've got this lineage of coded symbols that are tucked away in there, underlying all of the energy of the tarot. But once again, that's not true, and anyone who does any serious research into art history or card history will find that tarot cards have originated in Italy in around 1450. There's plenty of books that will give you good information on how they came about and why they came about. And so you don't need to feel that there is anything too magical or mystical about the underlying energy of the cards. What else is there, Francis, that you might have heard about tarot cards that seem a bit odd for somebody who's beginning to use them?
I've got two. One is that you should not buy your own deck, and the
Yeah.
other thing that I've heard is that you shouldn't really read for yourself.
Yeah, okay. They're very good ones. And yeah, keeping it simple. Yes, you can buy cards for yourself. There was this old superstition, I think somebody ages ago said that you should be given a deck by somebody else. It could have even originated from the idea of the shamans who go through an apprenticeship. And once they are ready, they get handed some tools to use and they build up their connection with those tools. But in this day and age, there is no drama in ordering a pack for yourself or buying a pack for yourself. And there's even this idea of having to steal cards, that not buying them. You have to either be given them or steal them, which is ridiculous. And poor shopkeepers and things have to put up with this idea. It is still common thought that people keep asking me, do I have to steal a pack of cards or do I have to wait till someone gives me a decent pack of cards? I'm sick of being given these cards I don't really appreciate or don't resonate with. So yes, feel free to take it upon yourself to buy a pack of cards that you want to buy. There's so many nice ones out there, and even with the right of weight, there's plenty of ones that are very similar. If you don't like the harsh colours of this, there are things like the Universal deck, which is the same sort of design, but just in softer colours. There's a few like that that might be more appealing to somebody more sensitive. And the other question you had about readings for yourself, I'm not really sure where that idea comes from, but you don't have to worry about that either because as long as, okay, let's start again. I can see why some people would say you um, people might have trouble reading for themselves because they might be just wanting to see things in the cards, see what they want to see in it. This new relationship, is it going to work out? Oh, okay. Three of Swords. Oh, that's probably okay after all. Um, I can get around that. But uh, if you are honest with yourself, if you can know that what's coming up in the cards is there because there's a message for you, you've chosen that card for a reason, then take the time to dive into it, to look at it, and to use your intuition and or even meditate on it to get the real message that's coming through rather than just what you hope to see. The other thing about that is for beginners, a lot of times they can be a bit wishy-washy in what they are asking when they do a tarot reading. So the other thing that I try and build into people when they come for a workshop is be simple with your question. Get your question under control. Bring it down to something as simple as possible. Don't have two or three things relating to that question in your mind when you're shuffling the cards. Have one thing in mind, one question you want to ask. Keep that in mind when you're shuffling. Know in advance what sort of spread you're going to use and deal out those cards. And you should have a nice, plain, simple story in front of you that you can interpret for yourself. And I'm cheap. I'm a cheap bastard. I don't want to go spending money on other tarot readers just to tell me what I already can find out for myself. So I often do tarot readings for myself, and it's not necessarily about my spiritual progress or anything big like that. It can be something as simple as, hey, I'm wanting to go off to a nice restaurant to take my wife out for a nice meal for Valentine's Day, which is coming up in our time at the moment. And so maybe this one that I've heard about would be good. Well, yes, you could take a chance on that. You could take a chance on what reviews you might have read in the paper or TripAdvisor or whoever it is that you look at these days on websites. But is it going to be good for you? Maybe when those other reviews came through, they had their top chef on the day, and that when you go through, that guy's sick and they put on someone on a standby basis, and you're not going to get the same sort of meals or service, or half the staff might be in a grumpy mood because they just told they're going to get fired at the end of the month. So there's lots of variables like that that would be good to know about prior to investing your time and money on. And it's not just for a meal at a restaurant, but it could be for when I'm booking holiday accommodation. I will narrow down what I think are going to be two or three good choices, and I'll do a separate reading for each one. On this date, in this place, at this location, what should I be aware of about booking a room in that hotel or that accommodation or that Airbnb, and do a separate reading for each. And it's amazing how often you can say, well, that really looked good on paper, and that looked good on paper, and that one looked okay on paper. But when you do your readings, you go, no, 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 that one there is the good one. That's going to be the best experience for us. And I've been doing this for many years. I bought this in 1985 is when I bought this book. I wrote it in there. And I've been doing readings pretty soon after having got my grounding on that book and others. And I can honestly say that when I have been going on holidays and booking accommodation all through, that I haven't been misled by what I've found in my tarot readings. What we've come up with has been the right sort of information and given us the best experience. We have great holidays because we do our research and because we double check things as we go along. And we are not averse to getting talked into booking a holiday or something through a travel agent and then saying, okay, that sounds really good. Thanks for that. Yeah, book that. And just got to check on whether I can get that time off of work. And you go home, you deal out the cards, you go, holy shit, no, okay, no, sorry, I'm busy that week. No, sorry, I can't do that holiday. So we'll have to postpone that. Yeah, and we only go to places that we know are going to be good based on what we find out from the information on the cards and through our intuition and can honestly say that we've always had a good time and never been misled by the information that's come through.
Fantastic. And I'm thinking, we can use it. You talk about holidays, but also like if you're applying for a job or
Yeah.
wanting to find a new flat or some a whole lot of range. So would you use like the Celtic cross, which is the standard reading of the 10 cards, 12 cards, 10 cards for something like that? Or would you just do like a 3-card spread or a smaller spread? How would you go about if you're wanting to say, okay, what's the best hotel or what's the best suburb I should move in and whether I should apply for this job or not? What sort of spread would you use?
Yeah, for big decisions, I'll use the big spread. It's based on the Celtic cross spread. It's just my own sort of variation of it, but based on that, has very many similar positions for it. And I like that because it's going to tell me what what I'm aiming at psychologically about this issue, what challenges can be there, what I can expect over a particular time frame, and what the outcome could be. And so, yes, then I can dive in a bit deeper once I know all of those areas tied all into the outcome. And if I'm just doing something like a meal at a restaurant, which is neither here nor there really, I'll run off 3 cards, and if it doesn't look any good, I'll just go, okay, what's next then? And look at another one and go, oh, that's good. Or if I do 3 cards and one of them is not looking as positive as the other cards in that spread, in that 3-card spread, then I'll pull out some clarifying cards to find out if I can't work out exactly why that card is there, why it looks a bit odd. Then I might pick out a clarifying card to guide me further down the rabbit hole as to why, what to be aware of anyway. And if I've got 2 out of 3 cards that are good and one that's a bit dubious, and I find out after doing a bit more looking at it that it is just something a bit odd, but overall the experience is going to be good, I'll still go with that. It doesn't have to be a full house to make me make a decision on something. But definitely important stuff. I'll be doing big spreads and maybe more than one on that subject
Oh,
because yeah, you might do your 10-card spread. Say, yep, this is good in those areas, those areas, those areas. I said, well, I wonder how I can improve that. What if I am looking at this job, and what if I said to them, yes, I can't start straight away, but I'm starting about a week's time. Is that going to change things? How's that going to affect me? Because I might be so busy leading up to it that I'm going to go in there worn out to start with. So you clarify things and then you keep on doing readings until you're fully aware of what you want to know.
Right. It's sort of it is like a little bit more to tarot reading, especially like for yourself, which you can do, than what some people may actually think out there, just pulling some cards and different ways that we can sort of dive in and get more clarity into these sort of big decisions or other decisions in our lives as well.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
as long
very
as as long as you're grounded when you start, as long as you've got a clear question in mind, as long as you focus only on that question as you shuffle the cards and lay them out, then it should be pretty clear right from the word go as to what your answer is about that particular situation. And it's only when you start to um, fluff around or not get yourself focused or have too many things running around in your head, or if you start thinking to yourself, well, I hope this card turns up, or I hope that card doesn't turn up, that's when your subconscious is going to focus on what's going on in the background of your mind. And so those cards that you don't want or do want might turn up and you'll be fooling yourself once again. So you have to be clear in mind. This is where meditation can come in. If you're a good meditator, if you can do good meditations on a daily basis and clear your mind or focus your mind more specifically, then that flows over into being able to be a good tarot reader as well. Because no matter where you're doing a reading, whether it's at home in a nice quiet environment, or if you're doing a reading out at a marketplace where there's lots of noise and distractions going along, if you can focus, then you can do a good reading for yourself or somebody else.
No, fantastic. Thank you very much for that. We are coming to the end of our time, but You've given a lot of advice, I think, for seekers. Is there anything else? I'm thinking about, say, when you're starting off learning the cards. I mean, with your book, do we have to memorize every page in the book, or how do we go about sort of like, especially with the Rider-Waite? And I think this is why the Rider-Waite deck is probably a really good deck to start off with. Is not only is your book go into details, but do we have to memorize everything, or is there a quick way of sort of getting a gist of each card?
There is a quick way, and I'll just randomly pull these out of there, and that card is on top, luckily for me. But you don't have to look in a book and realize that this is a card of celebration. What I like to do in workshops is to drag out a few random cards and just say to people, what's happening in there? What has the artist drawn? Don't think about interpretation at this stage. Just tell me what the artist has drawn. And eventually they come up with, oh, well, there's three people. It looks like they're women. They've got nice, colourful dresses on. They're holding their cups up high. They've all got flowers in their hair. And look on the ground, there's all these vegetables and vegetation there. So by looking at that, you can immediately get the idea that it's a positive card because it's a scene of, well, if you had to say what they're doing, you'd surely, by raising up the cups, you'd say, well, these people are celebrating something. They're going cheers, like a group of friends would do when they get together and they meet up and they want to celebrate something. They grab their glasses and they go cheers and all meet in the middle there. And if you're just looking at that and realizing how much abundance there is in that card, how much positivity there is, then you can straight away come up with interpretations such as joyfulness. It's a celebration after some effort, or maybe it's where people have had some good news and they're celebrating that. It could be that someone's decided to get married and everyone's really happy for them. Sure, it could be that interpretation. But the energy of that card is what's important. It's what you see happening in that card that you then brings about your intuition to give you guidance on what's happening there. And as I said before, if you know a little bit about the background of the cards and know that the Suit of Cups is all about the emotions, then you know that what they're doing is celebrating a joyful sort of occasion. It's not that they're overthinking things. They're just feeling with their hearts and they're opening their hearts to a situation. So it's a combination of having a bit of an understanding of what the suits are all about and looking at what the artist is intending to put into the cards as an interpretation. These cards, Arthur Waite gave his artist a list of interpretations that were being used back in the day for divination. And so he would say, oh, three cups, it relates to this, this, and this. So she drew something that was appropriate so that when somebody looked at it, they knew what she was trying to impart as qualities of that card. So it's a nice combination. And in theory, by looking at it, you can get an idea as to what it's about. And by having some background knowledge on the card as well, you can fill in the gaps.
Oh, wonderful. No, thank you for sharing that. And it's another good way to sort of like put the books aside and just sort of trust your intuition a little bit more. So
True.
where can people find you? I mean, you've written your book. You talk about you're writing another book. Are you still running workshops, or do you have anything online, or how can people find you?
At the moment, it's online. On the Mr. Tarot website, there'll be links there to a video course that I've set up. We're talking about 9 hours of footage, 9 hours of video classes that are going through, and it's not just me sitting there talking to you. It's lots of visual things and lots of animation and lots of this, that, and the other to guide people through on a more not necessarily entertaining manner, but not boring anyway. But 9 hours taking you through in the beginners through to intermediate, and then intermediate to professional level, so you can feel comfortable doing readings for other people. So just look up Mr. Tarot's website and have a bit of a browse around there, and you'll come across the link to the video classes. And I don't know what they cost these days. They're pretty reasonable, whatever they are, for 9 hours worth of material. And you can take
Yeah.
it all at your own pace and stop and start whenever you like. And yeah, I think you'll find it worthwhile. Very good reviews on it, so I'm really happy with that. And
Uh,
yeah, worth checking
uh,
out.
That's fantastic. And I'll put the link below the video
Okay,
because it's Mr. Tarot. So it's Mister
that's the one. That's right.
tarot.com. So, Don, thank you very much for your time and for sharing a little bit more information about the magic in you.
Oh, it's fun. It's fun talking about tarot. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to rave on.
More than welcome. And any upcoming workshops that you may be doing in the future, they will all be on your website, and also your book, which has got a purple cover, not the old
That's
purple.
right. Have a look at that on Amazon for that one.
Yeah.
Yes, that's about all I think I've got to say. So thank you very much for the opportunity to chat about tarot, and
Uh,
catch up with you soon sometime.
you're more than welcome. And thank you once again for your time and blessings.
Thank you very